very timely subject. I mean, we try to do that.
What is it?
I don't know. I haven't got there yet.
Oh.
I'm still trying to figure out what it's going to be. No, we
That's
are.
timely.
Yeah, sometimes we hit it right at the right time, and other times we miss the mark just a little bit. You know, we're behind
Huh?
behind the curve a
What?
little bit. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how we are. You know, we're a little slow sometimes, and we realize, oh,
Like all the time.
yeah, Mother's Day was last week. Maybe we should have talked about it. And so, no, we're talking about Father's Day, right? And so the question is, who's been instrumental as a father in your life, right? And so I'm not talking about necessarily your birth father. It might have been, but maybe your experience with your birth father wasn't the best, right? And there's not a lot of good memories there. But I promise you that God has a promise for you that He will send people in your life along the way to father you, right? And sometimes we just don't have eyes to see it, and sometimes we don't have eyes to see it, especially when they're in the middle of it. But you can really look back and say, God, oh, that's right, when I was in this space, someone spoke some words of truth into my life. Someone gave me some encouragement when I needed it. Someone helped me along the way. And that's are times when God sent people to help father you. Or maybe the question is, how has our Heavenly Father fathered you? You know, and so as we're thinking about Father's Day, I'm just inviting you to kind of open up the topic a little bit more. And if there is time to take and thank your earthly father, then absolutely do that. But if it's other people, maybe reach out to them and let them know, hey, you made a big difference in my life. And so we're going to be talking about that today. And where I came up from it, with the topic is one, you know, Father's Day is tomorrow. So, you know, that makes it easy. Woo! We're on Father's Day Eve. Robbie, we missed an Eve.
That's true.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you got to put the microphone up. The radio
That's
guy
true,
was telling
and
me
yes.
that.
Father's Day Eve.
Yeah, we were Father's Day Eve.
And a lot of us are fathers.
Yeah, a lot of us are.
So we got big gifts coming. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
yeah. We've been called a lot worse. I look around the room and I probably called most of you a lot worse. But anyway, no, as we're talking about it, I heard a comedian and he's talking about the importance of Father's Day. And this is a couple years old, and I don't know where he got his statistics, but he's talking about where Father's Day ranks in a yearly basis with the great holidays. So here, let's go ahead and listen to it.
Father's Day is the worst holiday in the world. I've done the research. I already know. Let me tell you something. Mother's Day is the second most celebrated holiday in the world. Christmas is first. So that means it's Jesus, then your mama. You know what Father's Day fall at? Number 20. I can't think of 18 other holidays. Do you realize Halloween is number 6? Does that mean ghosts and goblins go before fathers? Arbor Day is number 13. I don't even know what that is. I just know it come before me. That's crazy. Columbus Day is number 16. Celebrating Columbus Day is like celebrating somebody finding money in your house. Where you get that $50 from? I discovered it in your kitchen.
Well, he goes on from there, but that's the best part of that clip. And I wish I could tell you who it was, but it was on a YouTube feed that didn't mention who it was. And so, you know, you're like, okay, I don't really know who this comedian. It was like funny comedy bits or something like that. So I couldn't really even give him credit. But I appreciate him bringing it to attention, because I think a lot of times fathers do get the little backhanded, you know, compliment kind of thing. And honestly, for a lot of times,
Underwear for Father's
yeah,
Day.
underwear or tie.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Socks.
Socks. You know, if you need underwear or ties in the socks, it's a weird outfit. But I mean, maybe that's what you want to wear. But no,
Harold?
Oh,
Is that
my
what you wear?
birthday.
yeah. Harold, you got anything you want to say? You're kind of looking at me. I don't know if you're mad at me or if you just want to say something to me.
No, I'm not mad about anything.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, give us some time. The show's not over yet. Yeah. We'll go back to the biting comment here in a minute and kind of go, oh, yeah, we go from there, you know, those kind of things. But no, well, I think sometimes people's feelings on Father's Day are definitely earned. You know, when we live in a fatherless society, statistically, you know, and it gets worse every generation, that more and more houses have kids growing up without the father present at the house, but worse than that, not even present in their life. Right? And so Father's Day often brings up feelings of hurt, you know, feelings of abandonment, those kinds of things. But the thing that God promised you is He always has fathers in your life, as I said a little bit earlier. And so just opening up your thought to say, okay, Heavenly Father, just take a minute and let me see some people that have fathered me along the way. And maybe that is your earthly father. And I'll say it this way, maybe your earthly father taught you what you don't want to do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that still taught you. He was still instrumental in your growth. It wasn't pleasant, but opening up your eyes to see that differently and say, okay, God, I need some help here. And let's take some time to celebrate some fathers. And so we have some clips coming up. Is there anything you guys would like to add? Andy, do you remember the story from, what's his name, from Wild at Heart, where he talks about the Father's Day cards? I know we used it a few times.
Yeah, so
Morgan.
Morgan
Yeah.
tells a story, I think, I forgot the other author's name. But he tells a story about a nun who had an inmate come. She was kind of helping out in the prison, and he came and he said, can you give me a Mother's Day card? And she did, and it was such a hit. Everybody in the prison wanted, so much so that they couldn't even fill all the orders. They got free Mother's Day cards from Hallmark, and she was like, okay, I'm going to get ahead of this for Father's Day. It's coming up. And she ordered a bunch of cards thinking that there would be interest in them, and not one of those inmates wanted a Father's Day card. And it just shows the point is we are fatherless. We're all fatherless. I think that's the point of overall talk. But that just shows the impact of fathers not being in lives is the kids spilled out of control and you end up in prison or wherever because fathers are so important in our lives, and our society's tried to remove that, tried to negate the importance of a father in a child's life.
Oh yeah, if you look at most sitcoms, the father's the idiot character.
Right.
Yep.
Right. As much as I've enjoyed Everybody Loves Raymond, they made a career of making him look stupid.
Yep.
Yep.
And dad as well, the
Yeah.
brother, everybody. Yeah.
But part of it too is men haven't stepped up and walked in that role. Yes, that they've been. It has been abused. The idea of fatherhood. The devil wants nothing more
Right.
than that. He wants to take the fathers out of families, out of kids' lives. But with that being said, fathers always didn't learn how to be fathers. They weren't fathered to be a father, and therefore they're not a good father, and they pull back and become passive and stuff. So,
Yeah, and then there's a thing that we talk about quite often that part of the enemy's plan is if you don't have a really strong, close relationship with God, the
Mhm.
Heavenly Father, you will often put your perspective of your earthly father on God.
yeah.
Right? If my dad was never available, I think God's never available. Right? He's got other things to do. If he was very distant, I think God's cold and distant. Right? And so until we develop that intimacy,
If he's a strict disciplinarian, that's the way.
yeah, that's where you see God.
Yep.
It's really cool when Solomon is talking about, in 1 Kings chapter 2, King David is explaining to Solomon some of the stuff that he needs to do. And what he says in verse 2 is, he says, and this is King David speaking, he says, I go the way of all the earth, be thou strong therefore, and show thyself a man. And the word man there is not the word Adam, which usually you would think of as man, like mankind. This is ish. And that word in Hebrew it starts off with an aleph, which is like the alphabet. Like you get the picture, this needs to be a man,
Yeah.
right? And this needs to be the person in charge. This needs to be the head of the house. And that picture of that, the second letter is a yud, which is this idea of this God spark. Like it's going to be the head of the house that illuminates things. In other words, which brings great wisdom. Father knows best. Think of the things that Solomon was taught by his father because of his wisdom. And if you think about great fathers, you can't help but think that David must have been one of the greatest, because who was credited as Jesus' father besides Joseph? It was son of David, right? That was pretty cool. The last letter is a shin, which is the first letter in the word peace, shalom, or in Shabbat, which is the day that you rest, or the Sabbath, the idea of that. And so when you think of this alpha figure, this this father, head of the house, but underneath it is this peace, this sense of security that really makes a beautiful statement of what King David is telling the next king of Israel. Be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Be a man. And
And not a partial one, or not an unbalanced one. I mean, there's three letters that make that up, and all of them I can see as the attributes that we strive to talk. I mean, we talk about a lot in the boot camps.
Well, I'm glad you brought Shem to clarity. I thought he's one of the Three Stooges. So I wasn't really sure.
well, see, that's the whole problem.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way they've been done. It's Hollywood, you know?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think it has. But yeah, we're gonna be going to break here in a couple minutes. Anything you guys would like to add before we go to break? Anything that's on your mind?
I just think that when you start talking about God and following Him, there's only so far you can go and maneuver. You're not going to be perfect. You know, you have to be able to take things in stride a little bit of your own will. It's like, I want to strive for something. I'm not going to be perfect all the time. As long as you understand these things and you can take your own personal losses and go, okay, like for me now, I understand when I do things that are stupid. Okay, yeah, I'm stupid. I admit it. I go on. I thank God that He's going to save me and He's got other things for me, and I just apologize and I just go on. I don't live in this, oh my gosh, where am I? How are things going to be? What's going to happen to me? I just move on. I don't live in the failure of myself.
Yeah, and if you want to, as good as David was, you know, David's called a man after God's own heart, right? But he was a horrible father at
Yeah.
times. Just go look up his story about Absalom and his son and what happened to his daughter and how he handled that whole scenario. He made some real mistakes. And so maybe you're a father out there going, man, I've just blown it with my kids. As long as God's involved, it's never too late. Lean into Him and ask Him, how can I in this season love on my kids? Maybe it's a small step, but in either way, or maybe you have issues towards your father, ask him, how can I love on my dad that is very unlovable? And kind of go from there. Go to masculinejourney.org to register for the upcoming boot camp, November 20th through 23rd. masculinejourney.org. We'll talk with you after the break.
Royston, Georgia, right across the border.
Here are the contest rules for the Truth
Royston,
Network.
Georgia, right
Prizes
across the
won
border.
are not transferable, redeemable for cash, or exchangeable for any other prize. All prizes must be redeemed from the station within 30 days of winning. Only one prize per household from any station of Truth Broadcasting within any 30-day period. The rest of our contest rules are listed under the About Us link at our website, truthnetwork.com. Thanks for playing and
Do you
listening
have
to
stuff
the
to add
Truth
on the
Network.
topic? Okay.
It's time for today's STEM tip. Okay, you know recycling
I'll turn it
is
back up.
important. No one wants plastic in the ocean. Here's a cool way to repurpose a plastic bottle. Build an awesome terrarium. Cut a large plastic bottle in half and fill the base with sand, pebbles, potting soil, and your favorite plant. I chose an African violet. Put the top of the bottle over your base and place it in the sun. Your plant will grow sealed in its own ecosystem. Fun, right? Learn more at She Can STEM.
Here we go.
A message from the Ad Council.
A father's love, it doesn't shout. It's felt in ways you don't talk about. It's in the ride to school each day, the look that says it'll be okay. Unseen but steady as the sky above. That's a father's love.
Welcome back to Masculine Journey. I would love to give credit to whoever that singer is, but two things happened. Once again, it was a, excuse me, a YouTube clip where it didn't really say who it was, and then I accidentally deleted the email where I tried to find out who it was. And so, if you know who that is, please let us know. But it's such a pretty song and sings obviously about the positive side of a father's love, and that's what we're focusing on: is how God the Father has loved us, how earthly men have loved us and fathered us along the way, or our birth father may have done that. So we're talking more about that. Robbie, you have the first clip. First clip of this part of the show. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, this is from a movie called Men the Line, which is a neat setup that there's this war veteran who's got PTSD, and he's having all sorts of violent episodes involving hurting family and all this stuff, and he ends up going to a counselor, and this counselor wisely suggests fly fishing therapy. the wisdom of that is remarkable as I see it personally. Nonetheless, fascinating with this, the same counselor's been working with this other man that had PTSD for over 20 years. And he apparently at one point showed up in the kind of same condition and was taught to fish by other men. And so what we pick up this clip, he has been told he's supposed to work with this new kid, and his friend is asking him, you know, who this kid is, and he goes on to explain. And interestingly, that friend kind of humbles him. If you think about the clip later on, that you'll, oh, look, he got humbled to some extent, and then when he sees humility in the young man, it's time to go fishing. I'll explain in a minute.
So who's the kid? Some VA sob story.
Then you two should get along great then.
Doc wants me to teach him to fish.
Oh, you should. Pay it forward.
You sound like a greeting card.
You know, 25 years ago, from Iowa,
Ohio.
you couldn't cast worth it. And one for me and Bobby D, you'd still be fishing the Sacagawea Lagoon with the first graders for stockies.
Listen, man, I'm really.
Do you really want to fish?
Yeah. I do.
What's this?
Prince nymph,
What's it for?
imitating a mayfly larva underwater.
And this?
Mayfly emerger. When bugs are shucking their skins are coming to the surface.
And
Rusty spinner. Looks like a fly after it's mated and falls to the water to die.
when do you fish it?
Late night, right after dark.
You know, mayflies only live for one day.
No. No, I didn't.
Life's short. Okay, let's go.
Wait, what? Why now?
I've just learned the most important part of fly fishing. Humility.
Yeah, it's a amazing thing when you think about it. Is the fathering that's going on right there, right? You hear the father of the other man, essentially. And by the way, fishing for stockies, if you're a true trout fisherman versus native trout, it's a whole different world. Because the stockies come out hungry and they don't know a fly from anything else. But if you're going to really catch a native trout, you know, you got to present the stuff right. And the beautiful thing about the clip for me is you can tell that the man has studied those flies, right? As he's asking what those are. And I can assure you, I've flied fish in Colorado for over 20 years, you know, most of my life. Probably 40 years.
I was going to say 20 years is not most of your life, statistically.
Yeah. 50 years. Oh my God, maybe 60 years. Probably 60. Nonetheless, I don't know what those flies are that he described or how to fish them, you know. So I thought it fascinating. But then you hear him ask him about, and the only answer I knew was I knew that a mayfly only lasts a day. I did know that. It would have been the only thing that I knew, you know. But what he says to him is, you know, this idea of now that you've understood the very first important principle of humility, you're ready to go fishing, because as he was humbled by his friend, then he was ready to begin to truly go fishing with this new man in its own way, and it works out very much. And when you think about it, if you're fishing for disciples, it requires a great big humility. I fish most days of my life. That's true. Because I live on a lake and I love to fish, and my wife likes to go with me fishing, and so what a wonderful thing. And I will tell you, it will you never come to the water and it's the same deal. You know, the weather's changed. I'm convinced, as I've explained many times, fish go to school.
I've heard that.
I can use this lure that just, or a fly or whatever else that works and works and works and works, and then all of a sudden it'll quit working, something else will be, and it makes no sense. But if you come to the water, and by the way, if you come to the Word of God, thinking you know anything, I don't even know what one letter means. Better yet, one piece of Scripture. We will plumb the depths of this amazing Word of God for eternity. It's unbelievable. But the more humble you are, like Moses was the humblest man that ever worked. When you get down lower, then the water can flow down to you, which is what Moses being so humble, when he approached God, it was all a learning experience. Well, the idea of this is both my heavenly Father, he's been teaching me humility. And that lesson seems to continue and continue and continue. But what my earthly father taught me as far as fishing, and what he, I caught more from him than he taught. He was always learning how to fish. He was always learning his craft. He was always learning these kind of things, and he loved it, right? And if you love to learn, then you can have an absolute blast every single day of your life.
Thank you. Harold, is there something you'd like to share on this topic?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, as you said earlier, that we can learn what we don't want as well as the things that we do want. And my dad taught me both. He had a problem with alcohol, which caused me to go 180 degrees away. So, that's just, alcohol's not an issue for me, because I'll never do it. It was too painful. But he also taught me to have a good work ethic, to show up and to do my job. The man that's paying me, I owe. So my dad taught me a lot of things, good and bad. And one of the other things he taught me is he worked putting in a pipeline for the gas company. And it didn't matter how hot it was or how cold it was, he was out there. And he told me, son, get yourself an education so you don't have to work like I do. And he didn't tell me, I'm going to send you to school or whatever. His word was, get yourself. And so I did. And I've appreciated that part of what my father gave me.
Yeah, sometimes not giving your kids things and making them do for themselves is a great teacher. I know that I don't think I appreciated things that were given to me anywhere close to appreciating things that I paid for myself and earned. And you just have a different appreciation for it. Rod, Terry, is there anything you'd like to add on the topic?
Real quick, I think one of the lessons I learned from my dad was on his dying bed. I sat beside him. He was in real pain. I was a new Christian. I just got saved not very long before that. I sat in the room, it was just me and him, and all he could do was moan and grunt. So I asked him, I said, Dad, I says, you want me to give you something? And he nodded, said, yeah. And I went down and asked the nurses if they could, and they told me, they said, well, we just gave him something, and we can't give him anything else. Young Christian, never really prayed with my dad at all. Okay, just never did. My dad was, he was a fleet boxer when he was in the Navy, big guy. And I went back down and I said, Dad, they can't give me anything. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, you want to pray? He nodded his head. And this crazy kid reached down and grabbed that guy's hand, and I just said a few words that I knew how to say. Just really wanting God to do something for my dad. And when I got to the end of the short prayer and I opened my eyes, but Dad was asleep, right? Not dead. He was asleep. And I sat there and I watched him, And within 30 minutes, my dad was gone. But you know what I learned? I learned how to pray. I took it to another level. And it's because of my dad. I never got to say thank you, but I did.
Yeah. Your actions did thank you, because you helped him pass.
He helped me grow up when I became the man I am to know Christ today. And I don't mind praying with any man today.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. Yeah, it never gets, it's a joy to talk about, but it still is emotional to talk about when you go through that. And that's how you know when it really touches your heart and made a lifetime impact. We do have a boot camp coming up. It's November 20th through 23rd. It's in Royston, Georgia, and that's right across the way. If you live in Spartanburg or Greenville and you don't know where Royston is, wow. No, I'm just kidding. But just go look. It's really, really close to you, and we'd love to have you there. If you'd like to go to the boot camp, no problem. If finances are an issue, reach out to one of us. As a matter of fact, just reach out to Rodney at masculinejourney.org, and he'll be glad to get back to you and help you on a way to do that. Rodney, that's what.
Yeah, I would have to actually look at my email.
Oh, okay. So maybe not Rodney.
Remind me.
Yeah, well, anyone but Rodney and Jim, probably. I wouldn't reach out to Jim because he's probably not gonna look at his email either. Andy, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I thought you were saying Rodney was gonna provide a scholarship, and that's why you needed to email Rodney.
Well, he could, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that I can provide.
Yeah.
An email, no.
Oh, okay, okay. No, but a boot camp is a great place for God to step in and father you, right? He can do it anywhere, and he does it all the time. We just don't always have eyes to see it. And what I find special about a boot camp is it takes time for you to be quiet and listen to God and to really let him work on your heart in a way that I promise you don't often take time to do.
Yeah, and you know, I guess many people out there are fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Your fathering will never be the same after you go to a boot camp or your grandfathering, right?
Right.
Because you're going to find, we're going to talk about father wounds and stuff like that, and you go, man, I wish I knew this 10 years ago,
Mhm.
20 years ago. Well, you need to know it now, and you can do that by coming to Royston.
Oh yeah, even though I'd been in the message, I had wounded my kids a lot along the way, and leaning into God and having them come to boot camps, those wounds have been dealt with, and they've been prayed over, and they've been forgiven, and you know, I'm in a much better place with my kids than I'd ever be, and I want that for you if that's been your story. But go to masculinejourney.org. We'll talk with you next week. Love somebody well, and thank God for sending fathers in your life.
Well, I don't know if we're gonna have that surgery. Hey, Sam,
Sir?
the plan is, do you know the title of the song?
In a father's love.
Okay, cause the voice sounded like Francesca Battistelli to me.
Yeah, it didn't have a name. It was part of a group.
He's gonna be sitting.
Bethel Music or
It
something.
was like Bethel Music. I think it probably was Bethel Music.
The plan in the Father's love.
In the Father's love.
Yeah, I tried to see it. I looked at it for a minute.
He said,
You got stuff to share still?
Sure. He said,
Because we'll do Andy's clip, Danny's clip,
he said,
get you in there, and if I have time, we'll do my clip.
I don't think the tumor was actually
Let's see.
on the appendix. They showed the
Yeah,
CT
I like
scan,
the
it
clip.
showed
I think it's a
why
good
it
clip.
was back.
Yeah.
He said,
I'll be right back. I need to take some medicine.
here's what you gotta consider. You had a general surgeon going in there. He's a general surgeon. He said, then you had a colorectal surgeon, he's a surgeon. He said, this is where I live. He said, this is what I do. And so he said, I think that the best that they discovered in the second surgery was there all the time. They just didn't see it. He said, stage 4, he said, I'm not gonna dispute that. He said, got somewhat of a mess down there. He said, this goblet cell stuff is, he said, it's like the special of the special. He said, so, you know, he wasn't pulling any punches. And he said, so ultimately what he said was, he said, we'll go in there, but he said, what we'll do, he said, continue with the chemo. I said, are we gonna switch it to your atrium? He said, no. He said, just stay with Novant. He said, we wouldn't do anything chemo-wise differently. He said, they're treating you for colon cancer. He said, there is no appendix cancer specialized. He said, so, he said, but one thing we would suggest, they're talking about adding a third medicine. He said, I would stick with the 2 that you're rolling with. He said, and he said, 2 months we'll do another CT scan. See if the chemo's beating it back or at least stabilizing it. He said, if it is, he said, we'll put it in we'll do the 3 months chemo. Then we'll let you, break from it about 4 weeks, and then we'll go and do surgery. He said, we'll cut you from right here to right here. He said, I gotta open it up so I can see. He said, we'll go in. He said, we'll do the colon resection. He said, we'll target any disease we can find. He said, there's probably a little more in there than the scans are showing. He said, that's normal. He said, we'll clean it up best we can. He said, I won't know much till I get in there. He said, but he said, it's about a 6 to 12 hour surgery. He said, you've been in the hospital about 12, 14 days. He said, recovery's tough. He said, but he said, it's surgery. He said, but, he said, it puts you in a different light, basically. And what's crazy is, you know, I've been describing this as, you know, this is a prize fight, 15-round prize fight. And last night I prayed, Lord, please.
You're in about the third round.
Well, I said, if we're sitting in this meeting, I need to know whether this is the way I'm supposed to go, or this ain't the way I'm supposed to. You're gonna have to make this pretty obvious. And this guy's talking like when you're talking, and he's talking, ain't nobody said nothing about a fight. And in the middle of a sentence, he goes, and we're gonna try to make you a contender for the belt.
Make it a what?
A contender for the belt. And my heart about dropped, cause I knew right then God just winked. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I met the guy face to face that has appendix cancer that, I met through a mutual friend of mine. He was over there, he had appointments over there, so we met in the waiting room, talked for a bit. And he's getting ready to have his second surgery like that. So, it changed the narrative for us that here's some doctors that this is what they do, this is what they deal with, and he says, you know, he said, I'm not gonna pull any punches with you. He said, you know, he said, do I have patients that, you know, he said, nobody gets declared cancer free till after 5 years. He said, so, he said, but, he said, I got patients who are living, you know, 5 years later, maybe 10 years, maybe longer than that. He said, but, you know, he said, every situation is different. He said, every situation is different. So, but he was really positive, really, you know, he said, we're gonna be dating for quite some time, young man. So,
You have the first clip and the second show, you have the second clip. Right.
so we'll do 3 months chemo and do a CT scan somewhere in there and see where we're at.
So you're not doing the fillet thing
Well, we gotta do the 3 months of chemo
first?
first.
Okay. Sorry, I stepped out to take.
Yeah, see what that does, if, you know, reacts to it or whatever. And he said then we'll make a judgment call with CT scan, see what's happening. And he said CT scan shows you some, doesn't show you everything. But he's pretty optimistic that, you know, he said depending on, he said, you know, everything's different. He said, but, he said 1%, you know, he said out of all the cancers, appendix cancer is 1%. He said of that 1%, you have another percentage of what you got. He said, but, yeah, he said it's aggressive. He said, but, he said this is what we do, so.
How you feeling? You bouncing back a little bit from the other day?
Yeah, we are, had a pretty good day today. You know, this is recovery week, so. Told Michelle whatever, she said, Sue, I said, yeah, I'm starting to come out of the dip, I think, but I said, didn't know it that next Tuesday, we're going right
Here
back
goes
into the
again.
fight.
Yeah.
But you didn't hear me tell that I prayed last night, Lord, you know, 'cause you look at this thing as a prize fight. That's what I come up with over the weekend, you know, fighting, you know, 15 rounds or whatever. Right in the middle of this exchange with this surgeon this morning, he goes, and we're gonna try to make you a contender for the belt.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm like, 'cause I told God, make this, is this the way we're supposed to go? You know, make it plain. If it ain't, make it plain, and he made it pretty plain.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
That's really good.
That's heavy duty.
yeah, my buddy Scott that I've been texting and talking to that's going through this, met him face to face over there today. He had appointments, and he's getting ready to do this surgery the second time.
Wow.
Cause somebody's come back or whatever, and they're going back in.
Wow.
But he had it in like 2023. But I mean,
Did he have the goblet cell too?
I don't know if it was goblet cell or not, but he had 2 different types of cancer when they went in, and it was in his liver. He had all kinds of different things going on.
One of my kids just realized it's Father's Day Sunday. I was waiting on him to go, hey, what do you want to do on Sunday?
Where you wanna go buy underwear at?
Yeah, I'm at the point, I don't, if they want to come over, they can call me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd
My
like to see
daughter
them.
was going to the beach and all, so we're doing, I guess, Father's Day for breakfast tomorrow.
Yeah. That's why I met Caleb Sunday, because he's gonna be in Virginia next week, or this weekend.
My daughter and granddaughter will be in the weekend.
Oh, yeah, that's exciting.
Okay.
You got it on an off week, which is good.
Yeah.
Bless you. Got about a little over a minute. You go back on.
Yeah, or
Terry, you look a little different over there this time.
Change shirts.
No, yeah, I knew it was something. I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't put my finger on it.
Could wear your cap.
Where far out thou?
I know, I feel bad about saying something. I wasn't calling anyone out, but Terry jumped right on it, man. I was just saying all you guys, just making fun of all you guys. Yeah, he smacked the heart down. Yeah. Ask him to pray for you. We just learned that he knows how to do that, so let's do that for him.
I bet he does too.
Yeah, but he does. Just don't ask him for a heavenly kiss. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Coming to you from an entrenched barricade deep in the heart of central North Carolina. Masculine Journey After Hours. A time to go deeper and be more transparent on the topic covered on this week's broadcast. So sit back and join us on this adventure. The Masculine Journey After Hours starts here, now.
Welcome to Masculine Journey After Hours, and I'm excited about the topic today. What about you, Andy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can pull the microphone closer to you if
Yeah,
you
I'm
want.
about ready to smack it here.
Yeah, it looks
Well,
like it looks like it has a mind of its own.
Andy's got a mind of his own.
Well, I do.
Well, he's got half a mind of his own.
I'm in an argument, I'm in an argument with the microphone.
Yeah.
He was yawning like I thought he was gonna swallow the microphone right.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks like
It's tasty.
Looks like
I'm
a
gonna
fish
step out
on the line.
and get, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
just-
step out and get a cup of coffee here.
Yeah, you might get a big cup of coffee based on the way you just yawned. But yeah. No, what are we talking about today, Andy? Tell the listeners out there what we're talking about.
The
remember?
importance of father in our lives, or who's your, Robbie likes to say who's your daddy. But
Who's your daddy 2025?
That's right.
Yeah.
But really, just the importance of fathers in our lives. You know, fathers that are not our fathers and how they father us. You know, people that step in, God
Yeah.
brings into our lives. And then obviously everybody knows my favorite is God as a father to us all, and He's the Father of fathers. So,
Yeah.
yep, that's what we're talking about.
That
But
was-
the importance of it.
That was almost a present comment. I mean, you
It
had
is.
father.
Oh,
It was almost back
I
in the
like
day
to-
when you did the present.
It's hard to mess up what you're talking about if you keep repeating it, you know?
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did well.
I made the point.
Yeah, you did relatively well.
What are we talking about, Sam?
Fathers.
Yeah,
I think we're
good.
working on
Yeah.
fathers now. Yeah, we are talking about fathers. It is Father's Day weekend. It's Father's Day Eve, unless you're listening to this at a later date. It was Father's Day Eve a little while ago. But yeah, anyway, it's still valid. But no, we're talking about it and just opening our eyes up to the things that fathers have done for us. As we talked about in the last show, maybe you didn't have a great father, maybe you had some challenges, but at least he probably taught you what you didn't want to do as a father. You know, my dad had some really good points to him, but probably I made more agreements of things I didn't want to do that my dad did, you know, and it wasn't necessarily always healthy, but, you know, it did at least start me out in a good direction in some ways. But, Andy, you have the first clip of this show, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the first thing about it is Danny has just quit submitting Andy Griffith clips, so I'm going to take this.
That is not
I'm
true.
going to take this back from in the title of the.
Yeah, this is some Andy on Andy
That's-
stuff, so let's get that going.
But it's actually from the episode where it's not in the clip, but they've got a cannon within the town that Andy and Barney are trying to sell. And it's got, it's older, so it looks historic, but they don't know the history behind it. Well, Andy's been kind of embellishing what this cannon will do. Well, I think I didn't watch the whole episode.
Yeah, it's
But
like
Opie's-
28 minutes, man. That's hard to watch.
Yeah. Oh.
It's
You know
only
we
one
deal with
lifetime.
these clips. Man, if I'd watched every show that it's been a clip for, but anyway, it's been a while since I've seen an episode. But essentially, Opie's picking up on what his dad's doing.
Well, you're making
And-
this compelling.
Get off my back.
I need some coffee.
Get a dictionary.
Sorry.
You have to go way back in our episodes to
Yeah.
hear about that. But
We
anyway,
had 5 viewers. Now we're down to 2.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
but Opie he's picking up on Dad's habits or whatever, and and Andy comes in here to kind of counsel him because you'll hear Opie's been embellishing some of his products that he's got out there. It's just a funny interchange, and we'll just talk about it when we get back.
Ooh, we're gonna be back. Let's go. Here we go.
Wait now. How are you gonna be skating back when you don't have any skates?
Well, I'm gonna get him. Jerry and me are making a trade. His roller skates for my licorice seeds.
Your what?
His licorice seeds. What are licorice seeds?
And where'd you get them?
On another trade with Tommy Farrell, I gave him my cat pistol.
You knew?
It would have been worth it to grow my own licorice sticks.
You were gonna grow licorice sticks?
Yeah, but it was a fake. I planted them, and nothing came up. You know, Paul, I think Tommy cheated me.
Yeah, I'd say that sums it up pretty good. And so now you're gonna pawn them off on the next fella?
And on a better trade, too. Roller skates are twice as good as a cat pistol.
Let me tell you something here. You know that you've been taught the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Yes, Paul.
You think you've been following that rule?
Sure, Tommy did it unto me, and now I'm doing it unto Jerry.
I believe you're bending that rule just a little bit. Now, the golden rule says that you're supposed to be honest and square dealing with other folks. Now, telling your friends that them seeds is gonna grow licorice sticks, well, that's kind of far away from what you'd call square dealing, and it's awful close to what you'd call cheating.
I didn't tell him that they grow licorice sticks, Paul. I just didn't tell him they wouldn't. Well, I got cheated.
Well, now that still don't make it right. And I know that you wouldn't feel good at cheating your friend. Now, I tell you what to do. Now, you just keep them licorice seeds and forget this whole trade until you got something worthwhile to dicker with, all right? All right. Now, just always remember, honesty is the best policy.
You just listen to your pa, son. You'll never go wrong on that.
So it's funny, Barney says that, listen to your paw and you'll never go wrong. Well, shortly thereafter, it's really when Andy gets in and starts kind of basically telling stories about the cannon. So after that exchange, Opie continues on because his dad's doing something different than what he said.
Yeah.
And he goes, Opie ends up finding some cufflinks or whatever and said it was George Washington's buttons or whatever. And Andy's giving him a hard time, and it comes back to Andy that, you know, that Opie is right, and he changes, and they work it out as they always do in Andy Griffith, right? But, you know, a lot of times you can learn from your kids. You know, you feel like you're teaching them something, and there's things that I think probably I taught my dad in some ways, especially when I got serious about God in my 20s or whatever. I know that he saw the growth in me, and there's things that I believe that I probably helped him with. But just Dad did a lot, and I wouldn't say in my early age I knew he loved me and all, but I never saw him really as a spiritual man. But I began to see that later in life, and God's got me in this season of really appreciating, going back in my memory and thinking about the positive. Sure, there's a negative. I could focus on that, but I much more would rather think about the positive. I can just give you an example. I'm not always good. I speak in generalities and don't give stories, but I thought this story was...
In general, you do.
In general. Generally. General.
Yeah.
But I was a pitcher.
Especially George Washington. His buttons, you know.
I mean, I had a...
Sorry, go ahead.
I had a Danny start in sports. I wasn't very good at baseball. The first time they asked me what I wanted to play, I was like 5 years old. I said batter. That was my position.
You got to pick one. That's a good one.
But shortly after that, I threw everything into sports and really began to improve. Went to a different town to play, and we were a sorry team. But I was probably one of the better ones on it because I just really focused on it. But I was a pitcher, and not very consistent. I remember a lot of times I would throw balls that would go up halfway up the backstop, and Dad, one time, he noticed that my control was my problem, and he made me this we were in the country. My brother wasn't interested in playing sports, so Dad made me this thing to pitch to. He took a basketball goal, or hoop, and lined it, put some type of bag behind it to catch it, and he said, go out there and practice every day and throw into it, and I did. And I was getting pretty good, and that next week, I was really a much better pitcher. But also, I still had a tendency, I threw hard, and I also had a tendency to throw it up in the backstop, and I think a lot of people got up there and struck out because they were scared I would hit them. But I remember that time I was having such a good game that I got a bit cocky and started strutting around, and I heard about it on the way home. And, I think it brought me to tears. I was still young and stuff. So here we have a dad who helps his son out. And there was a lesson to learn from that of diligence and hard work and all that. And doing, practicing. And then there's this, I got cocky. I was humble to your point. And so it was just a way to learn. It was just a combination of things that he taught me in a couple different ways. And, Dad was really good. I mean, his dad was not in his life at all when he grew up. I think I've mentioned on here he actually later in his life committed suicide. And so my dad, he had his problems with his relationships with his wives and stuff, but he always stayed consistent in our lives. And he was hard at times and stuff, but I still just remember a lot of good things and the importance of his involvement in my life.
Yeah, one of the things you talked about there, Andy, that I think is important to realize, maybe your memories of your dad are pretty painful, right? And you can't really focus on good things. They're not there for you. But that's where you can invite God in and say, God, okay, work on this hurt, work on this woundedness.
Yep.
And when the sting of that goes away, when God helps you take that away, then you're left with times where you can think of better things.
That's right.
Because I see my dad so much differently now that when one, I'm a lot older, and so I'm looking at life differently. But also, God's worked on those wounds that I had, and I can look at him for who he was and not who he wasn't, because I want him to be something different than what he was.
Yeah, and to have grace. The thing is that perspective that God gives you. When he heals you, you can have grace for people a lot easier than you could before. Now, Dad was gone. I've talked about this many times. Dad was gone at an important time of my life, and I still suffer from it. I still, as much as God, I've stepped into it, and he's initiated me, and he's done a lot of things, I still feel weak in areas and things that I feel like it wouldn't be the same if my dad would have stayed in my life. But with that being said, what are you going to do? You can lean into God and allow him to put other men in my life and father me in those ways, and continue to just allow him in. A lot of times men get in the place, well, Dad wasn't there, I can't go to God, so this is on my own, the whole orphan spirit thing. I have to do it myself. And I tell you, the more you lean into that, you gotta have a spirit of humility. You do to do that, because it was pride that kept me ever from allowing anybody else to speak into my life, because all it was going to do was expose me, or so I thought. There's a certain amount of exposure that happens, but are you going to stay there? Are you going to move on?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Andy. Danny, you have the next clip.
I have to straighten up a fallacy that has been said.
Oh, yeah?
If somebody would have been here 2 weeks ago, they would have heard an Andy Griffith clip that I submitted 2 weeks ago. So, just saying.
You sound kind of defensive there, Danny.
Yeah. My honor was besmirched.
Besmirched,
Yeah.
that's right.
So,
he got the dictionary.
That's right, I used the dictionary. That's the only word I got out of it.
Yeah, it was in the B's. I did get any further.
Yeah,
than that,
I couldn't go much further than that. I got bored.
Yeah.
That's the next word.
Yeah.
the, yeah, I learned a lot from Dad growing up. That, Dad was pretty much a borderline mechanical genius. I mean, a man can fix anything. I mean, literally can. And I inherited a lot of that. I mean, I think it's just some of it's genetics. But some of his words of wisdom I recall growing up. And, my clip comes from Blue Buds, and it's grandfather Henry talking to Jamie about some advice between him and his dad. And it reminded me of some of the things Dad had said along the way. And but that we can play that clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Busted? What? I just got my second win. You want in?
No. I do have a question.
Sure.
How'd you feel when Dad stopped reaching out to you for help?
When did that ever stop?
No, I mean back in the day when he was coming up. He used to say that he had you on speed dial for like a decade.
And along came that fateful day. June 6, 1982.
You remember the date?
Francis was excited because he had managed to defuse a war between two Chinatown crime bosses. Everybody else was excited for him. I realized he never so much as mentioned it to me.
So it stung a little bit.
Maybe more. But I was proud too, knowing he was able to strike someone out because I taught him how to throw the forkball. So what didn't you go to him for? Busted.
Just this thing with this retired cop, but I handled it.
Handled it or handled it well?
Both, but Eddie thought differently. I keep wondering if she was right and I was just being defensive.
Here's the dirty little secret about climbing the ladder. The higher you go, the more you second guess yourself.
Yeah.
And with marriage, it's third and fourth guessing. So I'd say you're on the right track.
Thanks, Pop.
Now get out of here so I can finish the pie.
I remember growing up, watching Dad just repair things and, just watching him and usually aggravating him probably because I was right in there wanting to see what he was doing. But, the other thing in that was Dad always treated people well. And, he always a friendly face. Dad never meets a stranger ever. And I'm that way. I can remember riding to the auto parts store with him and always wanted to go somewhere with him, but would get tired before he was ready to go because he would talk and talk and talk. And now my son goes, Dad, we got to go. Because I'm going to talk and talk and talk. But, those are just kind of the things that I picked up from Dad. But he always treated people well. Didn't matter who you were or, where you come from. Dad just treated people well. And I can remember as I got older and started to work in the plumbing and heating business and stuff, he said, son, get paid for what you know, not what you do. He said, if they want to send you to a class or to a school or something like that, he said, go. Learn everything you can. And, that has served me well over the years. And because, basically I'm in a job now, I get paid more for what I know than what I do. I don't fix anything anymore, but I help guys on the phone fix things. And that's, solely due to advice my dad gave me 30, 40 years ago. So, and just watching him treat people the way he wanted to be treated. And, that kind of thing. And I remember it was 1995. I had gotten sober in 1994 and was trying to do the right thing and everything, and it was on a Sunday. I was supposed to go to an AA meeting, and I was supposed to be the speaker, first time and that kind of thing, and it was important to me, and we got up and the well was on the fritz. If you've ever grew up in a house with a well, when the well quits, you don't have any water. And so Dad said, we're going to have to pull the well out. I said, well, I'll call and cancel everything. And he looked at me and he said, no, son, you go and do what you need to do. He said, I don't understand what y'all do at those meetings, and I don't understand a lot of stuff that you talk about. He said, but I see the difference in you. So you go, we'll take care of the well. So, you know, it's those things that, you know, knowing that Dad loved me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. Rodney, is there something you'd like to add to this topic?
Yeah, I want to get your topic. I want you to talk and get your show.
My clip?
Your clip.
Well, I will. Okay, well, I can do that. If you don't want to share, if you're just saying, hey, I'm just going to hold it to myself, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, well, we got it. All right, so I have the next clip. And so my clip is from the movie Man of Steel. And you have, it's not Superman's natural father. It's his stepdad, if you want to be technical. It's his adoptive dad. It's the one that's been raising him ever since he landed here at Earth. And so it's Clark Kent's dad, you know, Mr. Kent, whatever his name was. Mr. Kent, I think. But anyway, he has some great advice for him here, and I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. But just listen to what he has to say. And what's happening here is Clark is sitting in the truck, the cab of the truck, and 3 of the boys from school come up and pound on the window and try to get him to fight. Now keep in mind, he's Superman. He knows he can win this fight, but he doesn't. And his dad is watching, and at one point, they kind of look over at the dad, and they see the dad's there, and then they take off, and the dad comes up, and they have this conversation. So you'll hear all that play out.
Come on, Kent. Come on, fight back. Get up, Kent.
So is that it? Is that all you got?
Come on, Kent. Come on!
Did it hurt you?
Yeah, they can't.
It's not what I meant. Are you all right?
I wanted to hit that kid. I wanted him so bad.
I know you did. I mean, part of me even wanted you to, but then what? Make you feel any better? You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark, because whether that man he has good character or bad, he's going to change the world.
Yeah, I love that clip. It's not just Superman. We have to decide what man we want to be, right? Because whatever man we decide to be, we're going to change the world. And so I had a couple stories that I wanted to share. One was about my dad growing up. And Dad would give me things like, you know, good advice. You never hit a woman, you know, and so I took that to heart, you know, because I knew Dad would kill me if I ever hit a girl, you know, and Dad's been gone lots of years, but that was wired in me, you know, you never do that. And he would say, never start a fight, right? Finish it, but never start it. And so I did a lot, you know, because I didn't want to come home because the first thing he was going to ask, did you hit a woman? And I'd say, no, Dad. And did you start a fight? Because I fought a lot as a kid. I had a lot of anger, and there's a lot to my story that causes that anger. And I think I fought almost every day in elementary school, usually with the same kid. But you can do a whole lot to not start a fight and start one. You know, I wouldn't throw the first punch, but I would be the instigator. So I know you guys are shocked.
No!
Yeah, I know. It's okay. Yeah, I know. It's surprising, right? And then my dad gave me great advice, like trying to say 5 times really quickly, smart fella, I fella smart. Right? If don't try that in a little bit, and you'll understand why, you know. And then he would just laugh and laugh and laugh at me because my dad had a great sense of humor and he had a quick wit, and so I grew up around that, and that's something that I tended to inherit from my dad. Is you just see life a little more warped than everybody else, and you think of things, and it just makes you laugh, you know. And it's gotten me through a lot of tough situations because sometimes things hurt so much that you just got to find a way to laugh at them because that's the only thing you can do because you can only cry so much, you know. And it's been a great thing for me, and it's something that you can hide behind if you're not careful, right? You can hide behind humor, you can hide behind those things. And so my dad did impart a lot of things on me positively. You know, initially a lot of the things for me was I made agreements that I'd never miss one of my kids' practices or games, and other than when I was out of state for one little short period of time in my career when I was traveling, I never missed a kid's game. I never missed a play. You know, I made as many practices as I could, and that was important to me because my dad never came to mine, and I knew how much that hurt. Right now, I did hurt my kids in lots of other ways, you know, because I'm a broken man, you know, and hurt people, right? But the other thing I wanted to share is how my kids have really, now that they're all adults, have really each taken turns fathering me in different ways. And because we have a really open and good relationship, that, you know, I'm going through some medical stuff right now, and Eli's been getting medical training. That's going to be his career. He's in grad school now, and, you know, he's going to be an athletic trainer, and he's helping me understand some of that stuff that I wouldn't have because I don't have that much time with the doctor. You know, Caleb helps me in ways, and Sydney helps me in ways, and it's just great to even have your kids step in and help father you in ways that you've never seen. And so that's kind of my story, Rodney. So we switch over to you for the last little bit of the show.
Yeah, it like you just said, you get advice from your kids every once in a while, and it really, really is nice. I know, like for me, just trying to reach out to them, as it just seems like it gets harder and harder and harder right now for me. You know, well, what do I say to them? They don't want to talk about God or talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I've had, you know, times where you just get told, well, I'm working on X and I don't need to talk about this or that. You know, there's just things that come up that's like, oh, we don't want to talk, I won't talk then. But really, like you talk about back to your own father, you know, he's never a Christian. He died, gosh, what was I was in my 20s, you know, later 20s when he passed away. And didn't know how good that was really going to be for me until I got older and like, okay, I don't have that influence of all of that. And I finally came to Christ. But just, I mean, outside of just not being a Christian, he was a pretty decent guy. You know, he did some things absolutely wrong that he should never have done and things of that nature. But growing up with him and being able to communicate and talk with him and do some things with him, we gardened and did those kinds of things together. I mowed yards, and he would help, fix the lawnmower, do those kinds of things. He would give some advice once in a while on those kinds of things, but he was still drawn away to something else that I always trying to figure out, where is he going? But usually it was uptown to the bar. That's just what he did. After work, it was go up there for a couple hours or so, and then he'd finally come home. It just kind of, you don't think about it until you get older and you know more about life and you know what you're just making decisions on, and then you're thinking, oh, what was he making his decisions on and what was going through his mind? And you kind of learn a lot. Like you were just saying earlier, it's pretty amazing how much you can learn when you're older and you can see things differently. And that's just where I'm at. It's a lot to sit through, and now that I have my kids, either learning positive or negative for me, I'm trying to live in a way that I can influence them well.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to be influenced by me, that's fine. But I'm just trying to live through and in all that.
Oh, thank you. Go to masculinejourney.org to register for the upcoming boot camp. If you are in Greenville or Spartanburg, about said those backwards, if you're in those areas, we're right across the border in Georgia, in Royston, Georgia. Beautiful camp, Camp Little Light. Amazing, amazing location. It's so much fun. Lots of things to do there. Go to masculinejourney.org to register. Thank you for listening, and let God love on you this week and love on others well. We'll talk to you next week.